Everyone hates Smurfs. No matter what rank, you're going to run into a Smurf or two during your games. They're impossible to avoid. That being said, there are a few options we can do when facing a Smurf. We could 1. Complain about the Smurf the whole game, or 2. Craft up a plan to beat the Smurf. Option 1 will almost always guarantee you and your team tilt and lose the game. Option 2, on the other hand, is still going to be hard, but it will give yourself better odds of winning against a better player. Along with that, you'll likely improve your individual and team play in the process, which in the long run will help you rank up and deal with those meddling Smurfs. Let's jump into the video where we'll show you all the tips and tricks you can use to make these Smurfs more beatable. First up, let's start on the defender side. This is arguably the hardest side to play against a Smurf. In most cases, the Smurf is just going to run out taking raw peeks and one-on-one duels. This is where Smurfs thrive the most. You're not going to win individual battles against these players. The Smurf is simply better than your whole team, so taking these types of duels is foolish. Avoid one-on-ones at all costs. Instead, focus on coordinated pushing. This is when you and your team will work together to push a choke point at the same time. Strength in numbers is going to be your best friend against a Smurf. No matter how good a player is, they won't be able to win against multiple players at once. Just make sure you don't line up in a straight line. Whatever you do, always push with one or more teammates. This is a good concept to have in mind regardless of whether or not you're versing a Smurf. Having someone to help you grab a frag or to trade a frag prevents risking a lost duel and sudden man disadvantage. Aim to have a numbers edge in your fights when possible. For example, in this clip, I peeked Spawn with Neon to get a 2v1 duel with the enemy Killjoy. Seeing how low my health was, there was a good chance I would have lost the fight if it wasn't for Neon having my back. Coordinated pushes don't have to just be about multiple players charging in though. Setting up abilities for your teammates to charge in can be just as effective. A few helpful abilities for playmaking include a flash, Molotov, stun, or smoke. In this clip, we notice that the enemy Jet needs one ultimate orb to get her ultimate. With this information, we suspect she'll go for one of the orbs early into the round. Because of this, we decide to double push through both orb points and challenge them. Along with that, we have our Omen ready to throw a Paranoia down A main if the orb gets tapped. The enemy Jet ends up going for the A orb. With the coordinated blind from Omen, I was able to dash in towards Jet and get a free pick. No matter how good the Smurf is, they're not getting away from these kinds of combos. Keep abilities and strength in numbers in mind when you're trying to take fights with the enemy. These two concepts will drastically increase the odds of you coming out ahead against someone better than you. Moving on from that, let's talk about how to work around the Smurf player. Like we said earlier, most Smurfs will go off on their own trying to frag their brains out. Because of this, there's a very low chance they're going to hold the spike themselves. There's a decent chance that the Smurf isn't working with the rest of his or her team. They're probably just going for flash plays. Someone less skilled on the team likely has it, and our job is going to be to hunt for those players. Therefore, if we catch the enemy player who has the spike, we force the Smurf to have to change their game plan and come back for it. The Smurf can no longer run freely now, and you can start dictating their moves by holding the spike. Whether that be the Smurf running into several players, having to run through abilities, or just running out of time to win the round. If you spot the spike and the Smurf doesn't seem to be nearby, go for it. Get one of those coordinated pushes going and try to eliminate the Smurf's teammates. Get the spike in an awkward position for the enemy to take back. Now, this strategy isn't going to be the most foolproof, as the Smurf will likely start regrouping with the spike eventually if it gets lost for multiple rounds. But until that happens, exploit that opening as much as possible. The theme for the defender side is to prevent the Smurf from doing, well, Smurf things. Don't let them push freely and get into those individual one-on-one duels. Once you see the Smurf, use everything: wall, flash, slows. Prevent Smurf from doing Smurf things, like pushing freely and getting multiple favorable duels. Last but not least, when facing a Smurf, you absolutely want to bombard them with abilities. Favorable numbers are always helpful, but we can do more by utilizing abilities as well. We showed earlier how we can coordinate abilities to make plays on a Smurf, but we can also use abilities to slow down the Smurf. For example, on Sage, this could be as simple as throwing your wall right away and chucking deep slow orbs to prevent the enemy from just running it down onto the site. Or on Breach, this could start off with concussing a choke point, chucking your 2 flashes afterwards, and then ending with an aftershock. This should give a good amount of time for your team to rotate and help you battle the Smurf. If a duel is absolutely unavoidable, you want to use abilities to try to give yourself a bit more of an advantage. This isn't too much different from what we did, but it could mean flashing before pushing the Smurf, or teleporting to an off angle to make it harder for the enemy to pre-fire your location. Point being, try to avoid a raw aim duel because you will lose that 99% of the time. Abilities will help give you that extra edge you need to make that percentage just a bit lower. Now let's get into the attacker side. This side tends to be more flexible in the number of plays you can make against against the Smurf. The Smurf will essentially have a designated spot they'll be every round. This leaves other choke points open for the taking, or we have other plans that we'll show shortly. The biggest strategy to implement though is avoiding the Smurf. We get it, the Smurf's good. Because of that, it's best to try to not get into contact with them. The Smurf can only be on one site or choke point at a time, so all we have to do is find where they are and run. It helps to have an initiator such as Sova, KO, or Sky when facing a Smurf. The reason being is that they all have abilities that can scout out for where the Smurf is playing. Sova's got an Owl Drone and Recon Bolt, KO's got his 0 point, and Sky's got her Trailblazer. Once the Smurf is found, go and push the opposite site. That's not to say the site will be completely free, but you'll be facing players around your skill level, which will be much easier to push through. If you're able to take site control and get into a post-plant setup, the Smurf is going to have a pretty hard time of playing retake. The more you get the Smurf busy rotating and retaking sites, the better. That means less time that he's successfully hunting for kills. This is the first step in getting more attack rounds. We need to dig a bit deeper though. For example, there's always a chance the Smurf will play the middle of the map, in which case he will have relatively quick rotations onto both sites. This would make our avoiding the Smurf plan a bit trickier. This is why it's important to figure out the enemy setup early on. Where is everyone playing? And no, we're not just talking about the Smurf. We need everyone. This information can be obtained through playing rounds and recognizing where players are positioned, along with using informational abilities such as those from the initiators we mentioned earlier. If the Smurf is playing middle like we just mentioned, then rather than splitting off onto a site, it might be better to push the closest choke point so that you can get on site as soon as possible before the Smurf can rotate. On ascent, this would be B garage or A long. Both get you in there quick while avoiding middle where you could be picked off. Another setup that could be utilized by a Smurf is having the Smurf on one site while the rest of the team is on the other site. This usually happens when the Smurf is more confident holding a site on their own. As a result, the weaker players try to gather up to help each other out. This is similar to our idea of strength in numbers. If this is how the enemy team is positioned, then running into the opposite site could be dangerous. Regardless of skill, pushing through a 4-stacked site is going to be difficult. It's actually better to just push through onto the solo defending Smurf in this case. Smoke off the choke points, flash out, and bombard him. You may lose a few members depending on the Smurf's skill level, however, you should be able to get onto the site and plant at the very least. This is just an example of a potential setup that may be used. Once you've found the setup, you can either isolate the Smurf out and fight with numbers, or find the best path to avoid the Smurf and force him to spend a long time rotating. Continuing on, every Smurf has habits. Are they a more aggressive player that pushes everything, or are they more passive where they sit in the back lines? These two styles will require different adaptations by you. Let's say they like to push really aggressively. If that's the case, then we can counter that by playing an off angle they won't expect. When they overextend, you meet him with a surprise shot from the back. Just double check if the enemy has a shorty though, so you don't end up getting whooped like I did at the end. Or maybe an off angle doesn't work because the Smurf checks it and still out aims you. Well, if you get the timing down on when exactly he pushes, you can use abilities like we talked about earlier. Flash out and swing out for the kill. How about if they play more passive? If that's the case, then we know we can push deeper onto choke points. It's free real estate and allows you to gain ultimate orbs easier while also closing the gap prior to your sight hits. If you're sneaky beaky, the enemies won't be able to hear you, and that means the Smurf will have to rotate later than they'd like. These are some basic examples, but the principle is the same. Find what the Smurf likes to do and then develop ideas to counter it. Last but not least, if things are still not working out well, you want to switch things up. One way to do that is faking sight. Particularly at low elo, and even high elos for that matter, players like to just pick a site and hit it. Not faking, no map control taken, just boom, go. If the defenders don't stop you, that's great, push away. But if the defenders do slow you down in any way, you may hit some trouble. Even a few seconds from a slow orb or Molotov can be enough for a Smurf to rotate over to the site you're trying to hit. If they're present along with other teammates, the chances you successfully win the site are going to be slim. Because of this, faking sites can be very effective. Bait out the rotations while having the spike planter and a few teammates on the opposite side. The slightest of abilities or noise will usually trigger a player to call out that the attackers are pushing. That'll cue the Smurf to rotate, but then, bam, you guys are actually going the other way. Now the Smurf and several other teammates have to make a long rotation to the other site. We recommend having 3 players on the actual site you want to hit, while having 2 other players as a distraction. You can distract by making a ton of running noise, throwing smokes and flashes, even shooting a few bullets to sell the fake. Once that's done, quietly rotate back to your team and regroup as soon as possible without giving things away too early. That's all we have for today's video. We hope this guide gave you some new ideas and tricks on how you can deal with those meddling Smurfs. Regardless, Smurfs are going to be annoying, and even with these tips, they'll likely still pop off on your team. Despite this fact, these strategies will at the very least give your team a fighting chance into rounds. Go through these options and find what works best on the specific Smurf you're up against. That's going to do it for us today though. As always, we here at SkillCapped want to thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.